Welcome back to the Ryan Magic Show. I'm here today with a really special guest, Arion Light, who's from the Embodied Business Institute and Warriors of Love. He is a wisdom keeper in the community in Melbourne, Australia, and the world. And it's an honor to have him as a new friend and to have a beautiful drop in together today. So thanks so much for jumping on, brother.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here. I look forward to seeing where the magic conversation takes us.
Awesome. For context, this is the third take. We had some tech issues before jumping on, so I've already asked him these questions and introed him 3 times. Funny. I love that though. It feels like it's just flowing off my tongue. Yeah. Sweet. So my first question is to paraphrase your entire life in 4 sentences. Go for it, brother.
Okay, so hitchhiked around Australia when I was 19. Which is a big country if you're listening from inside Australia. Secondly is ran away and joined the Circus in Ireland and travelled and toured with that circus. Third, had an incredible son and, the miracle of being a dad. Horrific pain through the death of his mum, my wife, when he was only 2.5. And then the resulting awakening to love that came through that experience that I now live and breathe and serve.
Thanks so much for sharing all of that. And I've actually got a different path that I want to take now that we've gone back through this for the second time, which is I'm curious to know, with the passing of your wife, the mother of your child, when that happened, before that happened, how did that experience shift your relationship to the way that you view life and through the lens of spirituality? Were you into spirituality before that happened?
Yeah, definitely. I had really strong spiritual experiences, like in my early 20s, and so was a devout, spiritual person. But I would call myself sort of, a lot of those things that we're catching up on now in terms of spiritual bypassing. I've also called myself dickless hippie, like very into the higher vibration.
What does dickless hippie mean?
Basically, it means all love and light. Yeah, all connected to higher vibrations. We're not really here on Earth in what's real, in what really matters, and so it's all about ascension, man. So I had a very strong spirituality from a young age, a child of hippies, but it was not embodied until when my wife was diagnosed. All my sort of spiritual sort of philosophies really didn't work, that I was incredibly angry at life. I thought I'd worked life out. I had my vision board. I just do my practices. Life will work out the way I want it. And then this horrific thing happened that just fundamentally broke my trust in life. And so I spent 6 months caring for her, doing all the right things as husband and father, but just getting frozen inside. And then there was a certain point when she was quite sick that I just broke. I literally remember being on the couch at home, like at midnight, and sliding off the couch, just beginning to cry. And the tears were so strong and so deep that I just couldn't deal with the level of pain that I was experiencing. And so as I broke, I just had this feeling of like being a failure, that I was trying to be a good husband, I was trying to be a good carer, I was trying to be a good father, and felt like I was failing at all of it. And somewhere in that breaking was this horrific grief that moved through me. And then somewhere in the bottom of that was this incredible love, like a love that I sort of read about in books, but it was just this love that feels like it didn't say anything, but it felt like it did. And it just said, I love you. No matter what happens, I'm with you and you're okay. And I remember sort of almost arguing with that love, like, no, I'm not. Don't you see what a failure I am? And it just, if you've ever tried to argue with unconditional love, it doesn't work very well. And so there was just this process of breaking and cracking into this love that just held me. And then the miracle that really has changed my life and is sort of the miracle that I now live from is that love then began to move through me, and I watched myself care for her and be able to be with her in the depth of her pain, as well as the grief and the questions that she was asking. Then I was able to go and be with my son and be with him, and just I was being the man I wanted to be, And yet I'd stopped trying. I'd actually broken, and here was love living my life better than I'd ever been able to. And so it was a real, like, explosion, awakening for me in that the self that I was trying to be, like that vision board, that willful trying to be somebody, hadn't worked. And then all of a sudden, this cracking, this breaking, was this love moving through me. And then she found that as well. Her last months on earth was what she called the love that cannot die. And we lived in that together. And she actually passed away in my arms and took her last breath. And I remember the intensity of the love that was there was so strong that it's almost hard to comprehend that this was the worst moment of my life, and the most epic amount of love was there in this horrific thing. And, I had this whole sort of new age philosophy of, personal development philosophy of go for your dreams, live your dreams, and all of those things. And yet here I was in the worst possible thing and closer to the truth of love than I'd ever been. And so it broke my whole idea of what success was, who I was meant to be, where I was meant to get to, everything. And I became a devotee to that love. Whatever you are, I remember saying to it, like, I don't understand you, but whatever you are, I give my life to you. I want to be your heart, your hands, your voice. And so it changed everything, because it wasn't a love that I could strive for or be worthy of or prove myself or spiritually meditate myself to. It was just a love that was that which I am at the very core of me, and I can't do anything about it. It's just the truth of who I am. And so my journey then took me in learning how to receive that love and learning how to open my body to that love, and then to help others open to that love. And then more and more in the last decade, it's about becoming that love in action. So with business and with projects and with whatever our dreams are inside of us that our love is calling us to bring into the world. That's my mission now, is to help those come into being so that we can be leaders of love in this world. I don't know if that answers your question. that's
beautiful.
A little bit of that story.
Thank you so much for sharing so openly what's such a personal situation with that story and that journey that you went through. How long ago was that?
That was, my boy's 15 now, so it was 12 and a half, 13 years ago that she passed. Yeah.
Wow. And so when you say that this love, you found this love that cannot die, timeless love in experience, that came to you through the energy that moved with the grief. Is that correct? Like it was in the moment of breaking down?
It came through a breaking. Through a failing of trying to be something and letting go. So it came through a death or a surrender or whatever, where I literally had nothing left to try and be someone. It was like, I didn't realize it, but unconsciously I was trying to be this person. So I was a spiritual man. I was a husband. I had this sort of version of who I was meant to be, and I was trying to be that man, and that I'd failed and broke on the floor. And it's like I'd shattered this sort of thing I'd been trying to hold together, broke. And then the love was just there. It was just, all right, when I stopped trying to be something, get somewhere, do something, be somebody, it's just that which I am. It's just here. It's so intimate and close and part of me that every effort to get there is laughable, because it's of which I am and which I'm made.
And I know it was like, it was a fair while ago, like 13 years ago. But for me, hearing it for the first or second time, actually, because Red Dragon experience, you touched on it, but I want to dig more to it, because I feel like there's so much beauty in it and power in it. Do you remember the moment? Do you remember the moment where you broke?
I do. Yeah.
Can you share more about the moment?
I developed a television addiction, which I'd never been into telly in my life, but I'd been watching NCIS and it finished and there was nothing else on telly, and I turned it off. They both had whooping cough. I'm both my boy and my wife, and so I'd been going from one room to the other, helping them sit up, and they both gone silent. And so there was this moment of silence, and then I literally remember just feeling this grief welling over me and sliding off the couch. Like I literally couldn't hold myself up on the couch anymore, and just falling onto the floor and sobbing, and just it's like I've been trying so hard to be the right husband, to be the man, but feeling like I was failing, and that it's like I've been holding back this feeling of failure for so long, and I just couldn't hold it back anymore. And it's like I released, and then the failure hit me, then the grief, and then the hurt and the anger, and all those emotions hit me. But for some reason, because I'd let go, they didn't hang around, didn't have to process them. They just moved through me, and then the love was just there. Yeah, it's one of the great mysteries of life.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
It's amazing to share it, actually, because it's when I share it, it's alive in when I share it, it is as alive then as it was now, or no, the other way around. It's alive now in this moment as it was then. Just the sense that, wow, that truth is so all-encompassing. There's so much other truths that I've worked from and grown to, but that truth of just the inherent wild truth of love that's in me, that's always here, it'll never leave me.
So what was then, once that breakthrough, spiritual awakening in real visceral form, what was then the shift in the relating experience that you were having with life at a more visceral level? Like, what were some of the stories that were different running through your head after that point? I've let go of this attachment to success and doing this right and getting the spiritual right, being the right carer and being the perfect husband and being the perfect dad. What were some of the new stories that were inherent within this timeless love that burst into you?
Yeah, look, I think at the core it was showing. I mean, this sounds almost, like, I've read it 1,000 times, but it was that each moment was so full, and if I showed up for each moment, it had this love in it. So if grief was there, because there was so much grief, like holding a woman who's looking at her son and knowing she's not going to be there to raise him, like, that's an intensity of grief that it's horrific. Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. And if I could be with that grief in that moment, it would just crack me, and I would cry, and she would cry in my arms, and we'd break, and then the love would be there. And so it was this sense of being so in the moment with the experience, and then the love was there. Yeah, so it's hard to explain, because as I hear the words speak, it's like it's just the same thing I've read, but the actual experience of it was just not carrying a past and future. Yeah, not carrying a whole lot of weight from who I was, and not carrying a whole lot of expectations for the future. I was just here in this moment. Yeah, stroking her hair, holding her in my arms with my boy, and there was this movement from laughter and joy to sadness to incredible wisdom. Like, she became this beacon of wisdom in her last months that was just like living with an enlightened guru. It was just, the presence was incomprehensible, the truth and the beauty and the tenderness of what she was sharing, and to some degree I was sort of comprehending, was epic. So it was really that there wasn't a lot of attention anywhere except right here, right now, and therefore the love which is in this moment was just here, moving through everything, and the distinction between good and bad just wasn't there. It was just, okay, this is a moment of grief, break, it hurts, ow, oh my God, this is a moment of such incredible beauty. Okay. So it was just like that process, that each moment, when fully digested, opened me deeper to love. And that the idea that I needed to try and get to a better experience and get away from a bad experience, which is like the fundamental driver of the identity of the ego. Yeah, it's like there's a good and there's a bad. I want more of the good, I want less of the bad. But this state was not that. It was just, whatever moment is here is the moment that I will encounter fully, and that the love, the truth of the love, is in this moment as equally. If the moment is a happy one or a sad one, if it's a good or a bad moment, is irrelevant to the truth of the amount of love that's in the moment, if I'm here with it in direct relationship.
I feel like you mentioned initiation as the way that you kind of referred to that experience. And it's like, I feel like that ego's construct of less bad, more good. People look at situations like cancer or death of a loved one or losing their job or some kind of big personal injury as some real negative experience, where it sounds like universe dished you a gift which was masked in something that you couldn't politically correctly say that, and then the grief welled up and welled up and welled up and welled up and welled up, and so you're pushing it away, pushing it down as long as you could with the TV addiction, I'm sure, whatever you could possibly do to cope with what sounds like the most. I can't even comprehend. I don't know what that feels like. I've never been in the situation that I can comprehend that much grief would come from myself. So to hear that, feel that, and then boom, it just burst open. So, and then that's where you found the love through the intense pain. And this is such a common story with spiritual enlightened leaders, where so much gets taken away, and within that, everything gets given. Like Gandhi get put in prison, Nelson Mandela was put in prison, and then through being locked up, he found freedom, and then he walks out as president of South Africa. Or even Ram Dass, who is a speaker, and then his voice gets taken away when he has a stroke. He can't do the one thing that he wants to do, and he finds more enlightenment through that. And it's like these painful situations create the depth and the opportunity for the rupture of the ego for people to find this. But you activate and initiate all sorts of people that are in lots of different situations in life that find you on their path. Do you have any way that you try to emulate, or like how do you introduce people to this? How do you initiate people without murdering a family member? Like what?
Yeah. Well, that's been sort of my mission, really, is to serve this love, so that not everyone has to go through that to encounter it. So, I mean, I think there's one piece of wisdom that my wife gave me before she passed that I know is really relevant to you, and I've been hearing about your quest. It's in some ways it's about how do I be in the world and also be connected to spirit, or how do I chase my dreams but not become an egotistical fuckwit? You know, how do I honor those tensions? And she said to me one time, it was a week before she passed, and what I was feeling was this intense beauty of the moment, and with her, you know, that each moment with her felt so precious. Like just bringing her a cup of tea felt like a miraculous act, you know, and at the same time there was this pain, this brutality, that her body was failing. She was sick. It was like so painful and horrific. And I remember sitting with her after I brought her one of those cups of tea and just saying to her, I can feel that my system doesn't understand what to do with these truths, because I can see the beauty of life, unflinchingly, the utter exquisite beauty of each moment is there in my face. And at the same time, the brutality, the violent, horrific brutality of life is right there in my face. And I feel like I can deal with either of them. I can open to the beauty and go, wow, life's a miracle. Or I can, sort of survive the truth that life is brutal and do my best. But I don't know how to live with both of them seem true. It was like I really took it to her in her sort of awakened space of, it's like life is going, these are both true, and I don't know what to do with them. And she said these words that I reckon I'll finally get their final meaning on my deathbed. But it was that put one foot in the beauty and one foot in the pain, and live from there. And what that has meant for me is that not trying to resolve duality in life. You know, we're going a bit deep now, but that there is that part of me that wants more of the good, and there's a part of me that wants to get away from the bad, and that fundamentally sets me up to rest, to fight with life. Whereas if I can put one foot in really that life is beautiful and honor that and receive that, and put one foot in life is brutal and, horrific, and live there and not try and resolve them, not try and overcome those truths, not try and escape to the beauty and run away from the pain. But if I can inhabit those two fully without moving, then I can engage in life from a different place. And that's my training, that's my path, is to learn to do that. And my experience is the more I do that, the more the love that is just reveals itself. It's just here. Yeah, it's not something I need to meditate or align my chakras or anything to get to. It's just the truth of what's here when I'm not pushing or pulling away. It's just that which is everywhere, through everything. It's the living fabric of existence that's only hidden from my eyes when I'm trying to get something, I'm trying to get away from something. When I stop, woven in the very fabric of everything.
Thank you for that. That's a lot to digest. It's a lot to digest. And you say it just feels like everything I say after that. It's like one of those spiritual epiphanies that can lead to spiritual apathy. It's just like, well, there's the big surrender. Okay, it comes from that.
Yeah.
There's nothing to do, nothing to pursue.
Well, and that's again for me those 2 feet, because I've wrestled with the same thing I've heard you talk about wrestling of surrender and choice. Yeah, like those 2 things. And for me, I've tried to make surrender the truth, and then I become apathetic and a bit of a floppy, like, oh, I'm just trusting the universe. But no, actually, I'm just abandoning my gift of free will. And I've also tried to be like, I'm in fucking charge of my life. I am the creator of my destiny. And I've felt the rigidity and tightness and the denial of the beauty of the moment. And so for me, that surrender and choice is, again, something like 1 foot in absolute total surrender, 1 foot in absolute pure choice. And that is how I'm learning to live, you know, to not put one over the other, not to try and make them fit together, but to recognize the incredible beauty of this moment and surrendering into what is, and the miracle of free choice. I get to choose my own direction and destiny, and my job is to learn how to just have both of them be true without trying to make them fit together. They don't. They do.
Yeah. Such a refreshing perspective. I attempt to wrestle with this myself with, like, I've got this model called the 3 choices. And it's like, we can create, celebrate, or elevate. And it's like, essentially, we can be disciplined, we can surrender, or the universe is just forcing us to grow in some way, whether it's emotional alchemy work, or, hey, go do a plant medicine ceremony, or do a red dragon ritual with Arion and Neville. Get that. And I love that. But you said don't align, like, you know, it's not just about meditation or aligning the chakras, but then you also teach people that. So yeah, I'm hearing that the transmission is life is going to be the biggest teacher when they thrust you into either brutality or beauty. And that's like the real, it's there. But I know for a fact from experiencing it, and you have all these containers that you create situations for people to do this inner work, inner journey stuff. What have you found to be some of the most powerful ways that you've created a initiation opportunity, or like a way for the embodiment of those 2 polarities to meet?
What for me has been really amazing is recognizing the body. So in that experience I shared with my wife, there was a real awakening to love, like the boundless truth of love. But my journey since then, that 13 years ago, has really been about recognizing that this body, this, you know, what is the unconscious mind, which is this vehicle that I move in, it doesn't know that love. And so my job is to sort of help teach it the truth of that love, so it can go deeper and deeper into the layers of my being. And so the 13 years since then have been a lot about unlocking the body to open to the truth of that love and inhabit that love more and more deeply and more fully. So that's been my personal journey, and then that's what has led me to work with others. So, you know, most of the work I do now I call embodiment or creation work. Yeah. So embodiment is that ability to go deeper into the body and open to the pain, open to the ecstasy, and uncover the secrets that are hidden right here in this body, in this breath, in this belly, in this heart, you know, in the body. That's so miraculous. And so I love that work of helping people open, you know, through breath work, through movement, through ceremony, through intention, through all sorts of things to access more deeply the miracle that's here. And what I love is I don't know what people will find. I just create spaces where they find it. And then I just go, yeah, when they crack open, the tears come out, or when the dragon spreads its wings and they remember how powerful they are, or whatever happens. You know, there's that. And then the other stuff is really around the word and creating and the power to, and this is what inspires me about you so much, is the power to do what you're here to do. You know, that this miracle of free choice that we have is, you know, in fact, I'll give you an example. So I was working with a client, huge-hearted, loving man, who developed a lot of the surrender we're talking about. Yeah, that sweet surrender. And he was talking about that as the truth, the way to live. And, you know, he's just trusting in life and surrendering. And I said, well, okay, let's imagine you look next door and you see a child being physically, you know, hit or abused by somebody. Do you accept that that's divine will? You know, do you just go, okay, well, that's meant to be then because it's obviously happening? Or would you go over there and use all of your power and your resources to stop that child being hurt? And his obvious answer was, well, I would do that. Yeah. And so that sense of the will that we have, the power we have to make a difference is often being, especially in people who've had a lot of spiritual training, or just a lot of people, we don't realize the power we have to make a difference, to follow through with action on what we dream to make happen and make the world a better place, you know? And that's where my real passion is now, that love that we all have inside us comes out, gets a voice, gets action and leads. Because if there's ever a time in history where warriors of love need to rise through all institutions in 1,000 different ways and say, actually, no, this is not okay. This is what needs to happen. This is where I see, you know, the education system going, or this is where I see the hospice system going, or this is where I see whatever it is. And so that's my work, is to help people find the love inside themselves, then to become love's voice, and then become love in action.
It's so interesting because both of those two pursuits are like materialized. There's the body, which is a physical manifestation. And then there's like creation of scenarios and circumstances in someone's life of purpose, service, freedom lifestyle, cool magical experiences that are all like tangible in the real world, anchored here. And then the body is anchored here. But then the essence of love flowing through into the body is like your intention of the first one. And then the intention of the second one is for the manifestation to be an intention of love flowing through. But they're both regimented in the world, which is pretty cool for someone that's a spiritual leader.
Well, I certainly don't think of myself as a spiritual leader. But for
you
me,
are. And you're a clown.
I totally understand. People could use that. I wouldn't say no, I'm not. Like I just don't view myself that way. But that for me, the spirituality without embodiment, without living it, is sort of really weird. And it leads to a lot of, you know, experiences that aren't mature. Yeah, whether that's just like leaving my job and going and sitting oneness in a cave. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I'm saying that I believe the ultimate expression of love is to bring it here into form in earth. Yeah, we're given this gift. I'm a way to say that is I'm not an ascensionist, meaning I'm here to that this world is inherently wrong and I'm here to rise above it and become one with the universe. I feel the opposite, that I am here to become that love as fully embodied in the flesh and in action in the world and in relationship as I can. So that's what I serve others to do. Yeah, I'm not interested in people who just want to sort of leave their physical circumstances, leave their physical body and find oneness and escape. Although I recognize that's a part of the path. I'm really interested in people who found that love and want to awaken it fully in their body and bring it to earth in relationship and action.
Wow. Do you perceive
I still feel like I'm serving that spiritual love. Yeah, I'm still a servant of that love, but I'm here in form, in life, because we only have this little bit of time in a physical body, this precious moments where we get to change things. Yeah, we get to be an agent of change. Yeah. It's like a miracle to have that.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll share a dream.
Okay.
I had a dream once, and I don't understand where dreams come from, but I met in this dream. I was with a whole bunch of humans, and then there was someone had a guardian angel with them in the dream, right? And for some reason, no one else was able to, but I was able to talk to the guardian angel, and I was like in awe of them. They were sort of, I can't remember if they actually looked like this, but they were bigger and radiant. There was this whole like guardian angel sort of vibe going on. And I remember talking to them and saying, oh my God, what must be amazing to never forget the truth of oneness. And like I was all in awe. And I can't remember the whole dream, but basically what this guardian angel said to me is, I cannot influence this life. So basically the angel looked around at these people and saying, see all of this? I can't change anything here. Yeah, I can radiate oneness. Yes, I know the truth of my existence, but I don't have power here. You do, and that power I remember waking up going, oh my God, like I was worshipping the being in oneness, but actually why the fuck we're here to be in form and to play with this realm of choice and action. So that was a real turning point for me to focus on this world and these actions and this voice as the vehicle for living a life of love, as opposed to trying to escape the body and escape my circumstances and my relationships to find the pure love, because I already am that. So let's live it here on earth.
I really appreciate the reverence for it. And I don't want to skip on past it without acknowledging it, so I can also breathe it in a bit deeper of the beauty of the opportunity that we have to create with these hands and our minds and our hearts. Thank you.
And our voice.
Thanks. Our voice. The dragon. Bit of a pivot, but you were a clown. And it's an interesting contrast, because we've been talking about such deep and grief and painful situations, but then there's like, you're also so funny because you got the clown in you, so you drop these little comments. And it's just been this little part of me that's like trying not to laugh at certain situations in our chat so far, because you just dropping these little things that are funny. And in take one, not in this exact interview, but when we had the tech issues and stuff, I was asking about how you being a clown has informed your journey as well. And I'm still really curious of this, because I grew up with such a fear of performing arts, and I've got to witness your authentic expression as Arion in this world. And you're funny and you love performing and creating humor, and I'd love to hear a little bit about how that has informed your perspective and take on spirituality and life, and but from that unique perspective of being an entertainer and being a clown.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, look, I'm incredibly grateful to Flippy. Flippy was my clown name. One of my jobs in the circus, I was in the circus in Ireland, and we tour from town to town. And one of my jobs was, once we arrived and got the tent up, I would go into town and let the town know the circus had arrived. And I had this incredible license to do whatever I wanted, because it was Ireland and I was a clown. And so I would stop traffic. I would go in and out of shops. I would go to schools and bang on. They just let me. I still can't believe they did. I'm sure they wouldn't now. And I'd go into classrooms and get stuck under whiteboards or stuck in the door and just clown my way around town. And I literally remember one time I was in a smallish town, and for some reason there was a big digger with like a big scoop on the front of it driving through the town. And so I jumped out the front of it and ran like it was chasing me, and ran through the whole town screaming like, no! And it was the whole town sort of gathered to watch. It looked like some bizarre scene of like slow motion. It was very, very weird. And I just had so many moments like that. And so I think the biggest gift, or at least one of the biggest gifts of the clown, is the social permission that you have immediately changes. Like, I'll get arrested. If I did the things that I did as a clown without the clown makeup, I literally would be arrested. But because I'm a clown, I have this different social permission to be crazy, to be
Did you get nervous
wild,
before? Did you get nervous before clowning, like doing this stuff?
I think I remember about to go on stage the first time and feeling a bit nervous because we had a routine and how was it going to go and would the people laugh. And I remember thinking, oh my God, in the next 3 months, I've got 160 shows or something ridiculous. Like, it was a huge amount of shows. And it was like, I can't take each one so seriously because there's so many of them. So, there wasn't a lot of nervousness. It was, the biggest thing was exhaustion, but that's another story, just on all the time. But it's finding the moments.
I'm just imagining a clown. I'm just imagining a clown on a treadmill, just like training for it. Sweating it out.
Yeah, totally. And the other thing that I really love about the clown is that and this is connected to the spirituality you're talking about, is that each moment is miraculous. Each moment is precious and each object is precious. So I was always the clown that couldn't get things right. Yeah, I wasn't particularly skilled at anything. Anything I try, I would just stuff up. And so I would continually be trying to walk through a door and banging it on my head and, trying to do a presentation. I had this whole thing where a whiteboard, those whiteboards on the fold out legs, I would fall and then it would be like attacking me, and this whole thing where I end up underneath the whiteboard. And this has been the whiteboard that's sitting in this kid's classroom for years just as a whiteboard. And all of a sudden it became this beast that I was interacting with, and it was attacking me and I was defending, and I'd walk away from it and it'd fall towards me. And so like that, taking an ordinary moment or an ordinary object and creating a whole different reality with it based on just purely that is fascinating, because it's ordinary life brought alive, I think, is one of the things that really excites me, It's how juicy a single moment can be when we're alive to it.
Yeah. Wow. I really love where this conversation is moving. And because one thing that I've found really difficult is like that serious thing, which is a safety strategy. It's a mask that I wear often, where play is really intimidating, because it means that I have to open to the joy of life and I feel more vulnerable. And so a part of my safety strategies throughout difficult times in life, and still use it on a daily basis, is like I'll go into seriousness to avoid intimacy with life. And I find it takes me a lot of courage to play. But then when I do, it's a lot of fun, but it takes a lot of courage. It's not just easy. It's a lot of fear comes up to play.
Totally. Yeah. Look, it's fascinating play. Here's another connection between my work now and the clowning, is that I now work with business leaders, people running 6-figure, 7-figure businesses, and my job is to help them do business better. And again, one of the core things they get from working with me is when they learn to bring in play, and I don't necessarily mean play like just, this is a game, but I mean the spirit of, I'm going to enjoy this for the sake of it. I'm just going to do this for fun as opposed to do this to achieve the result. That radical things happen, in terms of creativity, in terms of output, in terms of the ability to take risks. Because when we're in a state of play, they've actually done studies on this, that when we're in a state of play, we learn things 5 times faster than when we're in a state of sort of just trying to learn it without play. But I don't understand why that is. But this sense of, helping people activate and relate to their business or their company through play, actually, obviously there's the obvious benefit, it just becomes more fun, but actually it unlocks a whole another level of creative power that actually gets more done faster and easier. So I'm a big sort of, I train people in how to play these days as a consciousness. Not like, okay, we're going to turn this board meeting into a game. Everyone play past the parcel, not that sort of play. But in terms of the consciousness of this is a moment we're just going to enjoy ourselves. We're just going to participate in this moment fully as the game. And if we hit the target, the KPIs, or we don't, it doesn't matter in the end. And that actually creates a whole flow of life in an individual and in a team that I keep being amazed at how performance increases as play increases. Yeah.
Can you give an example of like how a scenario with like a group of people may have unfolded with people that don't usually play much and have like quite serious masks that they wear, and then how you're able to awaken it, so I can kind of get more of the experience?
Let me think. So, I'll think of my team. So when I was running Warriors of Love, I had a team of about 6 of us, and we were working a lot to grow the Warriors of Love program, and we ran all sorts of retreats and all sorts of things. And we went away for a weekend, and we we all had our roles, and we were all trying to make it work. And we got to a point where we got too serious. We'd been butting heads, and there was this tension. Yeah. And so we decided to go to the hot springs. We decided to just forget everything for a bit and just breathe in what we call the essence, that love, whatever it is that we are, and just let it move through us. And we started laughing and joking. And after about, a couple of hours of doing that, part of the challenge was that we were missing a person in our team, and we didn't know how to make that, how to cover that role. How were we going to do that? And just as we were laughing and playing, one of the guys just suddenly went, "Oh my God, I've got it. This problem we've been working with for hours." And he just looked at another member of the team and said, "It's me and you together. I'm good at this bit and you're good at this bit. If we take on this role together, we'll actually be brilliant at it." And It was genius. And they worked inside those roles and actually were really integral to growing the company. And it didn't come through sort of mentally work. It actually came just in this moment of totally relaxing and letting go, that we were, as a team, were able to see what was a radically different way. Like, we had the role of, this was the business manager, this was the admin person, this was the marketing manager. We had this idea of what the roles were. And then this person, just through relaxing in the hot springs, saw a completely different perspective that changed the trajectory of the company, because we actually then didn't need to bring in an extra person. We actually just all of us pivoted, and we found a whole new way to work and create together. That didn't make sense, but worked.
Yeah, what's coming up for me there, it's like surrender required, because the intellect, for me, my intellect is very controlling, and it wants to be in charge and making sure everything happens predictably. But the moment that play comes in, and there's creativity, and it's in the present moment, and we're having fun, that control part is gone, because it's just living in the moment. Anything can happen. And my experience is that beauty happens, but I got to trust.
Totally. And seriousness just kills the flow of life. You know, if we take things, we can go for things, but if we take them too seriously, something happens. You know, our life force diminishes.
Can you give me some tips personally? Because it really is an edge for me of the seriousness. If I just go, I've got a condition, and the condition is seriousness.
This is a meeting for Serious Anonymous. Yeah.
This is a meeting for seriousness in order to bring play.
I love it. I don't think I've ever been asked that question before. I've got the affliction of seriousness, doctor. What do I do with it? I think probably that, like, the Buddhist truth that we're going to die is actually really helpful. Like, just that meditating on it. Like, at some point this will all be over, and we'll have achieved whatever we've achieved. We won't have achieved what we won't have achieved. Like, that sense of, and I really saw this in my wife, when, like, the level of depth of acceptance of that she wasn't going to get to live all her dreams actually opened her to this incredible beauty of the moment. So I think it's probably, this might, I don't know, but being too caught up in your dreams, but having too much attention on where you're trying to get to. Now, I think for part of us, it's really healthy to have dreams. Yeah, I'm not someone who's just like, I just live in the moment, man. I love the juice that comes from going, I want this to happen, and like having that. But soon as we hold that too tightly, soon as we start to assess our own worth based on how close or far away am I from the goal that I just fucking made up yesterday, then that's when a whole bunch of seriousness comes in. Yeah. So in treating it as a game, we have a whole part of the Embodied Business Institute around creating games. So creating your business as a game to play as opposed to a goal to achieve, you know? So I think that's probably one of my pieces, one of my medications to give you is to just,
Thank you, doctor.
Take all of your goals, and burn them. Because if they're really true, they'll come back. Yeah, like this is what's, you know, we think, we learn I've got to be focused and relentlessly focused, but the shadow of that relentless focus is rigidity, you know, is losing the miracle of the moment. So burn them, see what comes back, you know, surrender choice, one thing you need, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that. And it feels really like synchronistic, because our relationship in this podcast is birthed through the synergy of being in the committee of Menergy over the next year, and feeling this symbiotic service that we have to each other. And part of my Menergy experience, speaking candidly, was that I was confronted with what I perceived to be some of the harsh realities of life, with an older demographic, a lot more grief that people were working through, me perceiving that the whole Menergy demographic was a bit more normal, a little bit less dreamy. And I've spoken to people in that exact concept, that I feel like I was wrestling with death, and having some of my like fantasies I would hold on to that blocked me from throwing myself fully into life, because I was holding on to the significance of these different things I'm going to accomplish, and creating separation from what's right here in front of me. And I see being on the committee of Menergy and really taking some of those lone wolf codes and throwing them in the bin, and thrusting myself into this community, and taking responsibility, saying yes to what is, and not holding on to what could be, as a bit of a theme. So it actually feels very fitting, that advice, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's definitely, Menergy's been, so if people don't know, if they're listening to this and don't know what Menergy is, it's a 4-day men's gathering. There's 180 something men at the last one, and basically they go away for 4 days and do workshops and ceremony, and there's a cabaret, and we eat together and have small men's circles, and it's really about a community of men that want to explore what it means to be a man without a specific doctrine of what that is. Yeah, so there's men from all sorts of different walks of life, different sexualities, cultural backgrounds, spiritual ideologies, So you've got farmers hanging out with, hippie drummers, with lawyers, with doctors, just got a community of 180 men who are there to explore together, to connect and be real and honest. And definitely Menergy has been an incredible rite of passage for me into my place in the, to be a teacher and also to be a student, to find myself in the fabric of a community where I'm able to shine when I'm able to shine, and I'm able to really shut up and learn when I'm able to learn. And that's been, I think that's another thing in terms of your question about how do we play more. I think the more we're held inside a village, sort of where we can be like, there's a time for me to bring forth my gifts, to go for things, and there's a time for me to go, actually, I need help, guys. And the more that's normalized, then the less we're trying to just be something and scared, oh my God, they'll see that I'm a loser. It's like, actually, we're an utter loser and we're a fucking legend. And if we in ourselves are okay with that, and we know that there's a community who goes, yep, you're a bit of an idiot there. Actually, you were really good there. And you can take that feedback. It's like, I can relax because I don't need to perform anymore.
Thank you for that. And I feel like a symptom of the potential of globalized society and all these new opportunities in the internet, and there's not just living in a tribe with 50 people in the same spot with the same theology and traditions, and it's the same. Everyone believes the same stuff. I feel like a shadow for me of that, being a part of that, is that I tried to control my life and separated myself from that natural community, and therefore tried to create a group of friends that are similar to me and hang around people that are similar to me and be around people that believe the same things as I do, and not integrated myself into a group of people that are different. And that's been a real big edge of mine. I want to be around people that are similar. And with that has come a bit of a hierarchical thing of the separation thing of, it's a shadow of mine of feeling better than people. And then I'm going to hang around other people I perceive to be better than, but then I'm simultaneously judging a bunch of other people, and I'm not getting the benefits and drawbacks of all these beautiful, unique flavors of people. And I can kind of feel the universe stripping that back.
I remember being in England, and we would run these holidays this was in my clown times, and we'd run these 7-day retreats for families off London estate. So we had a lot of survivors from the war in Africa. We had all sorts of people who were really struggling. We got funding to be able to run these what we call holistic holidays, and there was like 10 of us, social workers, therapists, all of that. And on day one, I remember one specific woman who she arrived and she was yelling at her kids. She was like rude. She was smoking a cigarette, and I think she was physically hitting her kids, but she was just like, "Get out of the way, Charlie." And I was just like, "Oh my God, this woman's a terrible sort of mother." And 2 or 3 days in, I heard her stories about the family she'd lost in the war and how she was surviving. And I realized that woman was showing more courage than I'd ever shown in my life. Yeah, that she was showing up as a courageous human being. She was activating more grace and more power than I'd ever touched in my life. And yet here I was going, she's smoking a cigarette and yelling at her kids. I think I know who she is. But when I see her story, that her courage was completely different. And that's so often the case, is that if we don't know somebody and we just judge them from the outside, we can't see the miracle of what they're doing and what they're creating, and the fact that they're still here.
Can very much relate to that. Thank you. And that's some of what came up for me at Menergy as well, getting to know some of the people that I initially labeled and put judgments on, and then finding out more about them and finding that like absolute admiration for the truth of what their journey looked like. And I'm curious to know, was it sounds like community was something that you're a part of. Have you ever struggled to find community or wrestled with community? Because it sounds like being in the circus and stuff, you must have had some kind of relationship with it.
Yeah. Community is a funny one, because I grew up with parents who were hippies and really believed that the world was against them for different reasons. My mum was a middle class woman, but had been abused as a young woman, and so she felt let down by middle class society for not protecting her. My dad was working class England people, all rich people, and pretty much everyone, priests, and everyone was fuckwits. And so they pulled away. I grew up a lot of the time in the forest, like living 10 or 20 k's from anybody in a little shack for some of my childhood, and then in a country town. And so community was actually something I didn't grow up around, that they were both a bit disjointed from their families. There wasn't a strong sense of community for me, or family for that matter. Although I knew they loved me, there wasn't this real fabric of family, and seeing my parents as leaders in the community. They were very isolated, drug addiction, mental illness, all sorts of things. So community's been something I've had to find, and I think it's something I'm still finding. Yeah, I'm still finding my place in community. I guess we all are, hey, but that I'm known as a leader in my community. I'm known as an inspiring character in my community, but still finding my place. Like at Menergy, I know my place feels very clear and flowing, but just in life, I'm not sure there's really an answer to your question there, but just that what is community, is it's fascinating for me, because like you said, we want to have a community of people that are really similar to us, to inspire each other and engage, and we live in a modern world that we can do that. We can surround ourselves with people with the same beliefs and things, and we want that, because that's how we excel and challenge each other and grow. But then there's also, that the other people in our world are completely different, but we can learn so many different things from them. So I've been blessed. I remember my men's group, after my wife died, they carried me. We had a circle, my men's group called a circle. This was like 2 weeks after my wife died. And we went down to the river right near where we lived, and we sat and we shared stories, and those men really said, I'm going to stay with you, and I see you, and I love you, and I'm here to support you, and let me share my stories of grief. And then they carried me singing American Indian. One of the guys was an initiated American Indian. I can't remember the tradition now. Anyway, they're singing this song that sort of meant I give all to you, or something like that. Some really beautiful thing. I should remember that if I'm telling the story. Anyway, they carried me into the river, all in their hands, and I remember them just being lifted up with the river washing through me, and I started crying just for the grief of losing my own wife and hearing other men crying, and then I remember this real moment of going, I'm going to be okay, because these men have got me. Like, that my grief is held inside community. And I then started to cry for all the men, specifically men, although it could have been for anyone, who were going through something similar to I was, who didn't have that, who didn't have a community that could grieve together, that could say, we see you in your pain, we see that you're changed now, we're with you, and we're going to continue journeying with you. It's like something, I felt this sort of sense that my grief wasn't mine to try and hold and move through. It was something that was seen and held by community, and that feels like a miracle, really, to me. Yeah, a true miracle.
Thanks for sharing that. That sounds like that story affirms my perspective that you have had community for a while. You've got a lot of experience with it, considering that was 13 years ago, and you were in a men's group that held you, and it's been 13 years since then. I feel as though community, just as an opinion, because I'm learning about it and I'm at the start of my journey, is something that the more I put into it, the more I'll get out of it. That seems to be my experience. But I'm finding a challenge with that with my current friends, that we don't all have the community thing going, but we have friendship going, and the community part is left out. It's so difficult to find time. It's like I'm noticing with my friends that I'm wanting to turn friendship to community with, that there's just a real collective shortness of time and busyness. And these aren't just like hardcore entrepreneurs. These are people that are into spirituality and and like integrated people, but it just seems to be that time aspect is, society's not set up for community in the same way that it used to be. How do you find time, or what do you feel like are some of the keys that you've had to keeping community together?
Yeah, I mean, that this is a subject I'm passionate about, but not necessarily qualified to talk much about. But the community, you know, so much of what I think mental illness is, and so much of the problems in society are a lack of tribe, lack of village, a lack, you know, like parents raising their kids by themselves. You know, we're just not meant to. I just genuinely, this is my dad's words now, I can almost hear him speak. We're just not meant to be doing it alone. Yeah, that we're not meant to raise our kids in all little boxes separate from each other. All the kids are just meant to be put in a group and playing together, and then the parents can chat, and rather than the kid, Mum, play with me, Mum, Dad, play with me, like all the time. There's an inherent fundamental fuck up in the nuclear family concept, I believe, because we are not like trees in plant pots, as opposed to trees with interconnected roots that are, you know, providing all those nutrients and things that come from it. So, yeah, that's the bigger picture. But in terms of how I make time for it.
And then what do you think some of the, like your proposed solutions, some things that have worked in that problem that you've identified that you're passionate about? I'm passionate about it as well, but with less experience and time invested in the idea that you have.
I think it's that we can. I'll give you a very specific example, because it's again something that I feel less. You know, talk about embodying and creating as love. I'll go forever, but community feels same as relationships. They're things that I feel less like I can get on my soapbox and go, here's how it is. But one of the things that I've done a lot of and trained a lot of people in is what I call calling a circle, and this is a way of becoming a leader of community instantly. And so I remember so many examples of it, but a simple one is if a man's going to become a father, saying to him, hey, I'd like to host a fatherhood circle for you and invite the men in your community to come around you, and we'll do a fatherhood ceremony. I've been part of probably 30 of them or something. Another one was this is the best one to share, actually. So this is actually a woman who was in our Warriors of Love program, and she'd been diagnosed with cancer before I met her. She'd heard about my story with my wife. She'd come, trained with me, and then she joined and became an incredible beacon of love in the community. And then the cancer came back. And so I remember sitting with her, and she'd been given a terminal diagnosis again. What do you want, you know? And she said, I want to live in community. And so we looked at finding different communities for her to be in. We couldn't find a community that felt right. So then we flipped it on its head, and we said, we're going to bring the community to you. And so for the last months of her life, we created a roster with 3 or 4 people a day, and they came to her place every day for the last month of her life. And I remember her saying just before she passed, I got the community I always dreamed in these months, you know. And she said, I want music, singing circles to happen. And so we created 10 or 20 or 30 of us came together and sung songs in her little house, the songs that she requested. And then a few weeks before she passed, she said, I actually want to have a funeral that I can attend. And she said, I want the whole room in white and yellow. And so we did. We got together, we created the whole room in white and yellow flowers. We made it exquisite, and we gathered for her funeral with her in a chair. Wow. And we celebrated her life. And I did that. Yeah. I'm the person who went and said, what do you want? And I went and made it happen. I didn't make the whole thing happen. It was an incredible movement of community. But every one of us can be that person that says, let me call a circle for you. Yeah, we've called it for a husband that cheated on his wife, and we said, dude, you're coming to fucking circle. This is not okay. Yeah, and so men came around and did that. We've had, people who, a friend who lost both her parents within a couple of months. We called a group together to help her clean up the house and all of those things. So I've probably called maybe 30 of those circles in my life for different people in different ways, sometimes to help people create their dreams. It's like, hey, this dream you've got is fucking incredible. I believe in you. Let's call a circle together. So I think in terms of a practical solution is that each one of us has that power to see someone with something where they could do with community support. Usually it's a challenge, but not always. And say, I'm calling a circle. Another woman who was a victim of domestic violence. And I said, I didn't even know her that well. I said, I'm calling a circle tomorrow. And we got a group of 15 or 20 of us around, and she shared her stories, and then she shared what she needed, and we all offered support for how she could, move forward. And so I feel like that's a power we all have to activate community in a really real way.
So cool. Thank you so much for bringing that to this podcast. That's so cool. Thank you. Wow. Yeah, I feel like for me, the thing that it would take a little bit of courage, because I'm not used to feeling as though I have the power to bring people together in that way, in that more social way. It's been a real edge for me even to invite people to birthday parties since COVID, which I've done, but it's been an act of big courage. So that just feels really exciting that anyone could call that for any person. And then I'm guessing the natural extra little connections and dinners and events that people attend together just naturally come from that, or amplified by that. Is that true?
Exactly. And then we learned that. My son, a couple of years ago, his best mate said, I want to organise him a surprise party. And so we organised it. This is, which I think a 13-year-old boy saying that about his other 13-year-old mate, him wanting to do that, is so special, And so we all hit there with the pop-out streamers and came in and surprised him. And that's such a special thing to do for someone. Yeah. And so that power that we have to do that, I feel like is underutilised. Like you said, we don't feel the permission, or we don't know how to. But I really, believe we can. And especially in crisis times, because there's often so much love around people who want to help and they don't know how to. And the person who's at the centre is too overwhelmed to be able to ask what they want. They've got all these people saying, if you need anything, let me know. But they can't, they don't even know what they want, or let alone communicate it. But if someone steps in and says, I'll create a circle of support for you, and then, we've done so many things like that where we've helped people in difficult times by setting up that circle of support, so that the person at the centre doesn't have to be the one initiating. And in a village life, that would happen naturally. It would be like you'd be chatting to Bill. We haven't seen Bill for a couple of days. We go and see Bill. Oh, Bill's sick. Did you hear Bill's sick? Oh, we better go around making it. Like, it would happen by virtue of an interconnected community. But because we don't have that interconnected community, then we have to be the one who initiates that, or it doesn't happen and people get left alone way too often.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I really love that. I'm excited to put that into practice, and I can already think of some examples of some ones I can execute on pretty quickly. So thank you. It's really fucking cool.
Well, your power to create is epic. So to link that up with the power to activate community is amazing.
Thank you, Arion,
for that.
Thank you. We're getting to the final stretch of this interview, and I just want to juice you a little bit more. And the next piece that I want to go a little bit deeper on is, you mentioned creation and embodiment are the two kind of channels through which you help amp up people's experience of life. What have been some of the most potent ways that you prescribe people outside your containers to deepen their embodiment? Permission for it to be as saucy as you want.
I think the first thing is understanding what embodiment means, so that we'd even bother to begin. So for a lot of us, we've been brought up that our body is a lump of flesh that we need to take care of so we can have a good human experience. But for those of us who've done deeper embodiment work, there's this realization that our body is something else. It's a living current of wisdom. It's a connection to our unconscious mind, because our feelings are stored in our body. Like, our body is not what we think it is, not what we see it. It is something else. It is a living intelligence that, when we connect to, can reveal countless secrets to us. Like, I remember I had a woman, a bodywork client years ago, and I'd touch a certain point on her back and she'd just start crying. And for 4 sessions, she would just sob when I held that point on her back. And then after that, it was gone. It's like there's so many things stored in this body and connection to. Anyway, I could go on about it all the time. But I think the first step is having that personal experience of, my body isn't just a vehicle for my experience, it's a living intelligence that is communicating to me all the time and getting interested in that intelligence. So I think that's the first step. I do a lot of dance, like free form, 5 rhythms, ecstatic dance. And those people know it. Yeah, when they're dancing and moving, you could look from the outside and going, oh, they're just having a lovely dance. But if you actually ask someone what they're going through there, it's like, oh, I'm releasing the pain of this, and I'm opening to new possibilities. Like a whole intelligence is happening through dance or through any of the embodiment arts. That's way more than we would just see from the outside. So I think that's the first step, is developing a reverence for the body and becoming a student of it, as opposed to, just, it's my vehicle. I'm here to do what, listen, learn. That's so juicy. And then I reckon the second step would be, just breath, movement, and sound. So breath work, learning to breathe, opening the breath, sound, learning how to open the voice to, the potency of what our voice really is, and then movement and dance and learning to just, we've all had those moments. I reckon anyone who's listened to this podcast where something else happened in the body. Maybe it's when we were making love. Maybe it was when we were swimming in a waterfall or on the beach, where this sort of life comes through the body. This, maybe it's running a marathon. It's like there's this something else happens where it's like, I'm alive, and that for me is something that we can cultivate every day through that attunement to the body, through breath, movement, sound. We can learn to have, an ecstatic relationship with the body.
I'd love to build. Sorry to interject there, Arion. I'd just love to build on what you said there, or speak from a place of knowing your level of embodiment and wisdom and how long you've been doing this for. That we're in a new age. What's the exciting new thing? Like breathwork's come on the scene as a new modern modality that young people are getting excited about, and it's not just the fact that they're breathing and connecting to their body. It's the fact that breathwork's new and cool. But to hear from someone that I've got so much respect and honor towards, and I know that you've been going there for decades, and for you to come back and just kind of laugh and say it's breath, sound, and movement. It's not some new invention. It's the way in which it's the taking full responsibility and going there with ourselves, using those three they're very simple pillars, but very extricate in terms of like the way in which they can be utilized for the purpose of embodiments. I just love hearing that from you. Gives it a lot more respect from me.
Totally. And I think it's like, I think in many ways we've got given the tools to live an incredible life right here. Yes. Like, so our breath, I was there when my son was born. He was born not breathing, and we had to resuscitate him to get him to have his first breath. And my wife took her last breath in my arms. So I've been right at the beginning and right at the end of life and breath. And it's a fucking miracle that we're breathing, And so, I totally agree that breathwork's got this sort of cool, like, man bun, tattoo, do breathwork thing. But actually, it's the heart of most traditions is conscious use of the breath or ecstatic use of the breath to open into different elements of who we are. So, and then the same with movement, which culture doesn't have dance as part of its religion, part of its tradition,
and singing,
and sound and singing, which, so that these things are like, we package them up into the latest modality, but so much of the value is just in the raw, being present with your body, being present with your breath, being present with your voice. And you're also at Menergy, where we had 180 men singing together. Yeah. And so that thing that when we don't just activate one of them by ourselves, but we activate it in community, that's when, miracles happen. I can't remember what your original question was.
It's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Just the embodiment, like, what's the embodiment practice? Breath, sound, and movement. Combine them up, use them, song, dance, movement, breath work, all of it. And one thing I want to add that's really present for me, because I disconnected it from it for a while when I first got into Tantra a few years ago, breath and sound in intimacy, in sexuality, didn't really exist for me. And I can't, because sex was something that was always to be hidden or shameful or can't make too much noise and got to keep it under wraps. And I cannot enjoy intimacy without my voice being a portal of unique expression. For me, it's the biggest ones, the breath, the sound, but also breath and movement. And it's like that thing where I can't forget it now. It's just, I've had an experience where intimacy was this 5% experience, and now it's upwards of 80%. It's incredibly different by vocalizing to create pleasure and energy movement in my body. And I forgot about it for a few months because I've had some intimacy blocks come up in relationship until very recently, over the last week or two. And it's completely reawakened my connection to spirituality, to spirituality and expression in intimacy. So just inviting anyone to experiment with breath and sound in intimacy and see how it amplifies your experience. I know you're a wizard in all that stuff. Yeah.
I can't believe you've opened the sexuality door when we've got a couple of minutes to go before the podcast finishes. No. This is one of my, for me to just, our sexuality is not just about orgasms and pleasure. It's actually the living current of life force. This, but for those of you listeners who don't, I think of it like a dragon. Yeah, it's a primal life force that lives in our body and gets activated through breath, movement, and sound. And that when we can wake up our sexual current, not as a lover, but as a living human being, then what happens to our sexuality is it's a completely different world. It's no longer about just pleasure and orgasm and sex, and that it actually becomes this living communion from my dragon to your dragon, or my dragon to their dragon, or whatever's happening in your sexuality world. And so the other part to this for me is that my sexuality was, after my awakening to love that I've spoke about, there was this period where I would experience the love in meditation but couldn't bring it into my life like I wanted. And the short version of the story is that that's where I had to do a whole lot of sexual healing because my sexuality was locked down from, traumas in my childhood. And so that meant that this love that I'd known as truth couldn't flow through me properly. And the more I was able to heal and open up my sexual life force, the more that love was able to fully flow through me and move me in my life. So I'm an incredible, I've ran whole sexuality retreats, and one of my great passions is the incredible beauty of awakening our sexual current for ourselves and watching men do that. Because so often men are like, what's happening with your sexuality? And they'll answer, if they're getting action, it's good. If they're not getting action, it's bad. Whereas for me, our sexuality is something so much richer than that. And that if we can tap that, this whole thing of love, being the theme of the call, gets its dragon on.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for naming that. And it is a little bit of an open loop, because I would love to have you back on the podcast and potentially sooner rather than later, and doing a follow-up episode and talking about that, because there's so much depth to it.
I'd love that.
Two options for you. You can either spruik and we wrap up if you have to go literally in the next 2 minutes, or you can spruik and have one more question. What's the go?
No, I've got to go. I've got a coaching call now.
Cool.
So,
cool. Well, thank you, Arion. Thank you for coming on so much. Please spruik.
Oh, it's a pleasure, mate. We could talk for hours. There's so many of the different subjects that we are clearly passionate about, and presumably your listeners are too. So loving it.
Yeah.
Spruiking, basically my core offerings at the moment, I've got the Warriors of Love program, but I'm not doing a lot with that, is Embodied Business Institute, which is really helping people take all of this embodied work and use it to bring their wisdom business alive. So if you have a wisdom business, coach, therapist, facilitator, content creator, something like that, and you want to create that business, you want to grow that business, and you don't want to do it just through the sort of traditional, here's the 5-step strategy, go and do it, but you want to do it from awakening the living current of your passion and then bringing strategy in as part of that current, then that's what I do. And I've helped, thousands of people grow their businesses from that embodied way. So if that interests you, I'm sure there'll be a connection or a link connected to this podcast.
We'll link it up.
Yeah, and then any embodiment or awakening you want to do, that's what I do. That's what I love.
Yes. Highly stand behind that. The Menergy too, the men's gathering that'll be next year. You're an absolute legend. I attest to you in big time. You've been doing this for decades. Thank you so much for coming on, listeners. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll chat to you soon, Arion. All the love.
Absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure.
See you, brother.